Welcome to DC, Developer Commentary, an informal, erratically updated blog-type, podcast-type series on game design and game development. Where other web series attempt to catalog individual moments of game design ingenuity and the lessons we can learn from their success, DC seeks to approach the wider art of game design from the top down, exploring the designer's mindset not just to understand existing art in the vein of media study, but to create new art from something like scratch. Think like creative writing instead of English lit. We will also be exploring some of the periphery of game design and game development, especially indie game development. Not necessarily the practicalities like how to make something for whatever market, but things like how to give criticism, how to take criticism, how to keep yourself mentally healthy, how to find and take inspiration, whether or not games are art. The short answer is yes, and the long answer is fuck you, yes. What it means to truly love or hate a piece of media, and the impact of our work as game designers, just to name a couple topics off the top of my head. I'm Shout, by the way, and I guess I'll be your host. At time of writing, I have been making games for 10 years, and I've worked in the quote-unquote industry for 7. As a freelancer, I've worked on dozens of games, usually as an artist or designer, of which precious few could be considered complete, and only a handful actually made it to market. If you were to ask me what I'd call myself, I would call myself a game designer. But I've really done a little bit of everything. I've directed, I've been led, I've been the leader. I've even been the hero, I've even been the villain, I've even been the victim, or rather, the survivor, and I've been everything in between. And in my day job, I am still, and hope I always will be, a game developer. But here, I get to dick around! See, designing video games is not only my job, but it's also my hobby. It is what I do for fun. It is what I do when I'm stuck and need some time to relax. It can be hard to parse information without a point of reference, right? But fortunately, I have dozens of project plans, past, present, future, feasible or infeasible, in development, hypothetical or otherwise, just lying around to dive into and examine. These design concepts will serve as our framing devices, reference materials, and characters and settings to help round out our lessons and vice versa. So if I'm a lecturer and the YouTube is my whiteboard, then Frogman is the doodle that I drew on the board to illustrate the powerhouse of the cell. However, DC is not a development blog per se. Not only are at least some of these concepts presented purely for the sake of argument, but we will not necessarily be comprehensively discussing any particular project, nor will DC serve as a promo for any particular project, nor will anything we discuss here necessarily make it into any final product. Besides, we won't necessarily always be talking about video games. Again, sometimes we'll be off in the periphery, for instance talking about things like mental health, where there's no obvious connective tissue to connect it to a video game. There's also an interesting gray area here, because I'm actually working on, or at least plan to work on, some of these games, and I can't guarantee that there won't be any spoilers, or retroactive spoilers in the case of retrofits. And moreover, the more concept a game is, in other words, the more less in active development a game actually is, the more likely it is to undergo big changes between any given video and its actual release. In fact, due to the nature of the format, some spoilers are inevitable, and for certain projects, mostly hypotheticals, we might go over a synopsis of the whole game to see how it interacts with the ludonarrative or whatever, but I'll try to use discretion. For instance, I'm not about to spoil the plot of, like, Jack and Casey, an extremely narratively dense game, but I might spoil scenes or character beats to make a point. But, at the same time, I will absolutely spoil the fuck out of Future Fantasia, at time of writing only a twinkle in my notepad's eye. Cause 1, Foo Game isn't that narratively heavy, it's like a Mario 64, and 2, it's impossible to really get into the moving parts of anything without some kind of understanding of the bigger picture. Just because Foo handles like she has one brain cell per twin tail doesn't mean that there's actually nothing to talk about. The point is, it's a case-by-case thing. By the way, I'm gonna assume most people play these videos like a podcast, so whenever you think I say something that might need a visual cue, open the tab for a second and see if it actually has one. I'm not gonna give you like a special sound or an audio cue or anything, because these are basically Easter eggs. Although I expect most of these videos will mostly be GIF, if nothing else, for the sake of my workload. Also, if anything we talk about on DC directly inspires you, as long as it's like a little thing, like you really like the micro missile from Cybercorps or something, go nuts! What I'm trying to do here is get as close to open source as possible without spoiling anything important. Just like, I don't know, credit me or something? So I can point to whatever and say, I helped. But if you do want to do something big, like take a project off my hands entirely or something, especially for retail projects, I do ask that you contact me because, again, I do actually want to work on some of these projects in the future, or worse, I might already be working on them now, and now you're doing a plagiarism. And at the very least, I might want to watch your progress. Finally, 2 more quick things. 1, obviously DC is a personal project, and I am just one particular dickhead on the internet. So by no means is my take the end-all be-all, nor do I really expect to hold any particular opinion, or design doc, forever. So if my opinion does change, or I spread some kind of misinformation, or notice something else I want to update, I reserve the right to cycle out old videos at any time. Finally, DC is a side project, not my full-time job. Someone has to make these games, after all. But I do plan on opening a Patreon, again not for any particular project, but rather my work, including DC as a whole, so I can support myself when money is tight, which is basically all the time. When that goes up, and it could be a while, Arcology is involved, feel free to join for access to special DC project concept art, or to vote on future topics, or anything else I can think of. I am also currently looking into a system that allows VIPs, for instance, people who have previously supported my work, free access. But that's still... I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Don't work too hard out there. This felt like a fucking, like an H-Bomber guy skits. A bird really did shit on the sketchbook? I can't explain why.